Hey, it's Doug. Welcome inside the CCM Cafe. Excited to talk about a brand new book that if you're a child of the 90s, I think you're going to fall in love with. One of the co-writers, Ashley Mofield, is here. Ashley, thanks for taking time.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here and excited to talk about the book today.
Well, growing up with music in the 90s means now I need readers, so let's make sure that I do this officially. The book is called Mixtape Theology, a devotional and retrospective inspired by 90s Christian music and culture. And I love this little description here, full of nostalgia, renewed wonder, and a whole lot of 90s cheese. Readers are encouraged to fall in love with these songs and the gospel all over again. This is too much fun. I've had a chance to preview, to flip through. I haven't read it all the way through, but talk about the genesis of this. How did Mixtape come to be?
Sure. Well, I am a pastor, and so before being a writer, I'm a pastor of a local church here in Middle Tennessee. But I'm also I don't know, you might call it a super fan, but I love 90s Christian music. It's when I began ministry, my call. I was in college and then seminary, and so some of those artists and songs really take me back to a time when I was growing, feeling my call to ministry. So it's always been an important time of my life. So much so that when I'm preaching a sermon as a pastor, it's not out of the ordinary for me to quote lyrics of a 90s Christian song or have a sermon that maybe even if I'm going through the book of the title, a book of the Bible, the title might be The Great Adventure or, some 90s song. And so there's a lady in my church that began to realize that. And she's a little younger than I am, but she talked to me and found out we had this same love for the music. Then she approached me a few years ago about writing a devotional based off of some of the best 90s Christian songs, basically taking those songs, and which was really hard. We picked 35 songs, and it was hard to pick 35 songs from different artists. And so we picked some of our favorites, but then ones that we knew had to be in there, and then write devotionals off of them. So she asked would I be willing to write a book with her of devotionals based off of our favorite music. And I said, I've never written a book before, but if I was going to write one, this is, you want to write something you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. So we wrote the book. And then as you talk about the 90s cheese, you can't really talk about 90s we've got to be able to laugh at ourselves.
Yeah.
So there are fun parts of the book, like, we kind of played off the Jeff Foxworthy, you're redneck, there's sections like, you're a 90s Christian if. So you might be wearing a WWJD bracelet or had a True Love Waits ring or things to do with youth ministry or skits or interpretive movement. So there's that kind of fun stuff. So it's nostalgic, it's fun to read, but also the Bible study devotionals, we hope we've found a sweet spot to where they're not just surface level. They're getting people to dig into the scripture mm-hmm. and the theology behind some of the songs. So the devotionals we feel are good encouragement, but deep as well. So I hope that people will have fun reading it, but they'll also grow as a Christian. And like you said, just really relook at the songs and fall in love with the gospel all over again.
I think that was a time, I know for me, where that part of my life, as you get older, music's still important, but there's that sweet spot where right. It's just your end all and be all. And I remember the Rebecca St. James God cassette and just playing that song over and over again. Lord of the Dance, Stephen Curtis Chapman, and it just soaked right in. So to think that we can go back and revisit that and then dig a little deeper and grow spiritually, that's a cool combination.
Yeah, and I love both of those songs. I love Lord of the Dance I think that was on the Signs of Life album. And man, Stephen Curtis, for myself and my co-writer Rachel, he may be our all-time favorite. We are huge Stephen Curtis Chapman fans, but you mentioned Rebecca St. James, God. That's actually one of the songs that we feature in the book and wrote a devotion about. So, and you think, well, the song's entitled God, but there's a lot of depth there when you really begin to peel back and look at the lyrics and dig into some of the theology. So it was a lot of fun researching and writing about.
And I'm remembering, isn't there not a part in there where you take lyrics, there's a little game that you play, is you take lyrics like the Newsboys' Breakfast and write them in King James?
We that was actually came from our social media. So before the book came out, we actually have a podcast. And the purpose of the podcast was to find our tribe. We thought we have this love for music, for 90s CCM. We know there's people out there like us. And there are. And we found those, and they found us through social media, and we began to podcast. But on social media, we would do a funny meme, maybe having to do with King James version, like rewrite your favorite Christian song. So whatever the thous and, I beseech ye therefore, brethren, to be thouest on the great adventure, whatever. And so that's a portion of the book that actually some of our social media followers started playing the game with us, and we put their ideas in the book as well. So it's not just our kind of our baby. There's a lot of people that were involved, and so we're thankful for everybody that had a part of it.
Was there one or two particular ones? You mentioned some of the stuff from Stephen, but another song or devotional there that just kind of stuck out, or did your co-writer come up with? Did you guys share in terms of?
Well, we divvied them up. So there's 35 devotions, and a few years ago we really sat down. We had a spreadsheet. All right, which artists need to be in there? So you're going to have, if you're 90s, there's got to be a Newsboys song. There's got to be an Audio Adrenaline song. There's got to be a DC Talk song, and if you're going to do devotion on 90s Christian music, you've got to do a devotion on Jesus Freak. And so we began to look at For Him and Point of Grace, and I could share all of them. But then we said, all right, this is my favorite. I'm writing on this one. And then there were some that, okay, Third Day, Consuming Fire, that's going to be a hard devotion to write. I don't know, Why don't you take that one, Rachel? Or even I had to write on Audio Adrenaline, Big House, which is a fun song, but I thought, where's the theology in a big yard where we can play football,
right?
But really digging into John 14, that Jesus goes to prepare a place for us, and He gives us this to give us peace in the world. There's more there than maybe meets the eye. So we divvied them up. We began to research the songs. Some artists I was able to talk with. For instance, Wes King was a great 90s artist and a great writer, and I actually was able to talk to him on the phone, and he had a huge hit in the 90s, The Robe. And I really enjoyed writing that devotion, and even talking to Wes. His inspiration for writing The Robe was a sermon by Charles Spurgeon talking about how Jesus clothes us in our nakedness and clothes us in His righteousness. And so it's a pretty deep devotion, and I'd say that's one of my favorites. But I've had to read it several times, and I'll read it and think, wow, Rachel did a great job with Heaven in the Real World. Or wow, look at Another Time, Another Place. I wrote that one, which is early. That's 1990, Wayne Watson and Sandy Patty, and just very incredible song. But I'll read that again and remember why I wrote the devotion. I almost get as excited, like, wow, there's so much here. It's exciting to think about and dig into the theology and think about the song. And there's something about music, it really does take you back to that place. Yep. So I think that a lot of people that love the music, that's what's it's gonna do for them. But you don't have to be a child of the 90s to enjoy the book. We also hope that maybe this will introduce the audience that maybe didn't grow up on 90s Christian music to realize it was a special time. Look at the creativity of these songs. Look at the writing. So if you're not a DC Talk or Jars of Clay fan or haven't listened to For Him, don't write us off. I would encourage you to give it a shot. You could still learn a lot from the devotions and might actually fall in love with some of the music.
That's awesome. Well, before we go, one more plug there for Mac Powell, Third Day, solo artist now, wrote the foreword.
Wow, yeah, we were so blessed to get Mac Powell to agree to write the foreword, and I think everyone's going to enjoy the foreword. And as he sent it over to us and we looked at it and worked through it, we found that he is a kid of the 90s just like us, how the music influenced him. and how he didn't know that Christian music was a thing, and he was just singing with a band, and oh wow, this is the thing, I can do this for a living. And then he discovered Rich Mullins and Stephen Curtis Chapman and Michael W. Smith. So you even see his own influence of the music on his life, and how he's still blown away that he shares the stage with the guys that are his heroes. And so I think the readers will enjoy just hearing his story and how the music, even though he's a big name of the 90s, before he was a big name, how it was impactful to him. So he's a child of the 90s like the rest of us.
That's awesome. Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
Mixtape Theology.